Yes, I am in landscape and I'm happy. I mean, I like portrait. A lot of people come, but I'm not even sure if you saw the guide because when you're in portrait, you can't see a lot. All right. So I'm glad you're here. Okay. So let's get to it. All right. Let's get to it. And this is the Bob practice. So, welcome home. We do this practice work I hate this delay. It's bugging me out. Forgive me. We do this practice every Thursday at 2 Thursday. And so let me gather us up first so nobody feels behind in any of this work. On Monday, we stood at the doorway, right? And I showed you the door. You were always meant to fly through. Remember, this is about melanin metaphysics, and the work I do is situated in melanin metaphysics. Okay, so the door opened up to encourage you to think about where you want to fly and the fact that you were meant to fly in that way. And then on Wednesday, in the commentary, I tried to tell the truth about the grind and naming the harness and the world straps on you the minute you pop out and you start to understand you're a person. At that time, you begin to be situated in a cage where you are held captive. And that cage exists for us all. Many times we have parents. We are fortunate enough to be around conscious and spiritual individuals that are not religious. I'm not saying religion, although I'm not downing religion, but conscious and spiritual folks that can help you understand the concept that you are more than just what this society tells you. But for many of us, we sit in that narrative and that story, and we forget the Ascension, which is some of the ancient African traditions which have been communicated and shared with us across time. We forget them, and we forget that these things are a part of us, and we don't have to explain our existence, prove our existence. We just exist in our fullness. And so I talked about the grind and the hustle, which is part of the cage. Now, I did in the commentary make room for people that feel that these types of activities are important for survival. Even Malcolm X talked about this in his autobiography about Harlem. People have to hustle to survive. These terms, however, when you look at the etymology of them, are extremely problematic. And as we understand the power of no-mo, the generative power of the word, and as we understand how words cast spells, we have to be even more diligent about the things we claim, as they come out of our mouth and cast a spell over our existence and those people who walk into our space, right? Now, I got a little bit passionate with that because I understand that. I was grinding, I was hustling, I was doing all that stuff as a single mama, right? And I know Black women out there can understand that because we can still have good jobs as a single mom and still not feeling like we're making enough money. And then we're in a salary bracket where we are outside of resources. So the idea of quote unquote hustle and grind in my prior sort of speaking activities was really relevant to me communicating what my existence was about. It seemed like it was a hustle or a grind. But it becomes problematic when those incantations we cast with those words take up residence inside of ourselves. And that is what, I really tried to share on Wednesday. You know what I mean? I just wanted to really get that out, and people can take it for what it's worth. And then we also talked about the teaching of the Ba, right? I really wanted to bring it home as to what the Ba was. And so the teaching is up there too. I did a double header yesterday because Tuesday I could not do the live streams. And I'm one of those folks that when I say I'm going to do something, I want to do it, right? I do it, right? So regardless of what's happening in my reality, I had to get those things out. And so, like I said yesterday in the teaching, we learned, my friends, that you were never built to carry your life on your own back, by your own muscle, right? You were built to conduct it, right? To orchestrate it with a power far greater than your own two arms. And we're going to get into this as we talk about the practice. And again, I encourage you to get the Bob Practice Guide. It is free and downloadable. So you have heard right now where the soul is trying to go, right? If you haven't heard, it's okay, because you can hear again today. You don't need all that other stuff, all those other live streams to be here right now to get something new, okay? But the Ba is the flight. So you have heard about the flight. And what you have not done yet is ask your own soul in your own quiet, honest question, my friends. Where are you trying to fly? And this is not where you're trying to fly within your social reality, within the constraints or the boundaries that you have. Where are you trying to fly? That's what I'm talking about. Where? If you could do anything, and this is aligned with your purpose. People always want to know their purpose. Well, this is about purpose. What would you do if you were not scared? That's the question. If you had no fear, if fear had not been installed in you, if you had not been inculcated, acculturated, socialized into the spirit of scarcity that takes up residence in us, where would you fly? Oh my goodness, just doing this. My next retreat, I'm gonna have to add in this activity because it feels so freeing just to stretch and sense yourself beyond the reality that you exist, to feel yourself expand around the planet, in outer space, everywhere. People can call me insane all you want, but the body tells you where you can go. That's why it's so important to understand the Khat, K-H-A-T, the first body of light in the first gate, because the body holds the whole story, all of it. The bad things that we feel, the good stuff that we feel, and the potential. And it holds where we want to stretch and grow. The body tells the tale. Whew. So listen, that's what today is for, right? We're going to get into some of this. And for those of you who already know me and those of you who don't, my name is Minister Dr. Akala Kama'at, and this is the Ascension. And today I'm going to share with you the Ba practice, okay? And that you can use with the Ba practice guide, all right? And the reason why I teach the practice and I don't do a guided practice is because I am one of those teachers, yes, in my retreats, in one-on-one counseling and sessions and all that stuff, I provide the guidance. But this is your work, your life, right? I help people to a certain point, and then it's time for folks to take up these tools and work them. If you do this work and you need help, you reach out to me. My email is in the description. I'm on all social media. You can find me, ask me, right? No, I'm not going to say you got to pay me, right? Because I'm with you. I've been here. And I didn't have the means to pay spiritual teachers to do this work. Right? So I had to do it myself. And I'm not trying to give this information because I had to do it. I'm just giving this information because the goal is not to get hooked on somebody taking you through this stuff. Right? And for those of you who are interested, I am going to make the temple into a free service on power-profit.com. I want to make it accessible to all, so we can do these practices in a guided way in the temple. I say the temple because it's private, right? I have to okay everyone that comes in that space. On YouTube, it's different. I don't know who's sitting in here, what they're speaking, what kind of energy is coming into this space. When we're in the temple, I know it is private, it's comfortable, and it's safe. And I believe in energy. So it's really difficult also for me to do guided practices here. Right? I need you to be captive in a place. So look for the temple to become free of charge. I'm going to do this throughout all the way up until January 2027. So I'm going to do this over the weekend, get everything situated so that it's free. I will approve folks though. There will be a questionnaire, but that's going to be all the way until the beginning of the year. So when you walk in to 2027, you got some stuff and you have a community of people working in melanin metaphysics and taking this ascension path, and you have access, and you will always have access. I'm not going to make people who've been there or charge people who've been with me that join. I'm not going to make them start paying. So when everybody starts coming in January, those are the ones that I have to pay. So you guys will be in there. Okay. So stay tuned for that. Keep checking power-profit.com resources so you can see when the temple opens up. It already has a ton of resources in there already. Okay. So I'm going to share the practice with you that you can take into your own stillness. Try it out. If you have questions, do not hesitate to reach out to me. I am an accessible individual. Okay. I understand the walk, the challenges. I may not understand your direct situation, but I definitely can understand wanting to rise above something that you want to rise above. Okay. And so the deeper guided version, like I say, of this lives in a temple. So we do all the practices that I teach on Power Prophet TV. We do live in the temple. And like I said, now they will be free, and there'll be announcements and they're weekly. So there'll be announcements as to when these guided practices are being done, right? And I'll be announcing those, on social media and on YouTube, so you know. And also, once you join the temple, you'll be on an email list to know when we're doing these guided practices. Okay. And so today I'm going to teach you the practice, and I want to explain it to you because we went through the gate of Ka, which in the power of release framework is the and if you have a question now, please feel free to ask it. I'm going to take out the YouTube thing so I can address any questions that you may have while you're here. Okay. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. What am I getting ready to say? Yeah. So on Monday, I showed you the door. Last night, I showed you the turn with the teaching. And tonight, I'm going to share with you how to ask your own soul where it has been trying to fly. And please know that a lot of these strategies, of course, I have had training and just a lot of research and things like that. But this is work I use in my own psychic practice. Yes, I'm a practicing psychic. And a lot of people come to me just confused about where they should go, what they should do. And so, many of them ask for exercises and activities. And these are practices that I have utilized with my clients in that regard, in retreats, and then in workshops that I have done. So, but everybody's different. So if you want to ask a question, if you are having a challenge, please feel free to reach out to me. And before I begin with the practice, I have to clear something up because I do not think I said it plainly enough, right? And it matters for everything that comes today. All right. We have been moving through, excuse me, I lost my thought. This is my thought that I was going to say, right? We've been moving through these bodies of light week after week. So the first gate was the gate of Ka, right? And that is the recognition gate, right? Because it's the whole power of release framework that I came onto the scene with. So it's about the gate of Ka was about recognizing the things that may need to be named and understood so that we can begin the release. The release is the gate of Ba, which we're in now, right? And then the gate of Ak is the reframe. We begin to reframe our beliefs, and what we do so that it aligns with where we want to soar and fly. So we've been going through these things week after week. And this is the 6th week of this series. So the Ka, as I mentioned, your body, your temple, right? That was the first. The Ka, the life force of your bloodline. And that was a very popular live stream. Those episodes were, because it's really connecting to the ancestors and building altars and, calling names and the like, right? Which is very important. We also went into the Ib, which is your heart, and placing it on a scale. That was about, us or Kim folks needing to prove that we're worthy, that we exist in this reality. And so, I talked about the scale being rigged. So no matter how you prove, no matter how you claim that you exist and you're worthy, even on the scale, you're still coming up as wanting. So forget the scale, right? There's something else there. And that was the Ib, right? You don't have to approve you don't have to show or prove that you exist, because you do. Okay. And then the Ren, which is the name, your name, and Nomo, right? All this is about the generative power of your name and the generative power of words and the sacredness of your name. And I talked about people who change their names. I wouldn't change my name. I have a spirit name, spiritual name, and then I have my given name, right? And they serve different functions. And while that may seem odd to people, it doesn't to me. And the information that I have, that I hold intuitively about how I should claim my existence on this planet. And we talked about Nomo casting, your words have generative power. You speak, there's a reality being created. All right. And then we talked about the shoot, your sacred shadow, the thing that everybody's like, oh my God, your shadow self, you got to do something with that. Our ancestors had a different perspective of the shoot. And I think the way I teach things one at a time, it is easy for folks to believe that each of these things are separate, right? And that's a misnomer. I don't want people to believe that. You learned the Khat, and then you closed the book and moved on to the Kai. Well, I did, right? And that you did the shadow. I did the shadow week, and now it's done. And then tonight we're moving on to a next thing. That is not how the Ascension works. Okay, these bodies of lights are not step on a ladder that you climb and leave beneath you. Not at all. They are not chapters that you finish, my friends. And I apologize if I've given that impression. They are inclusive. They cannot be separated. They are not mutually exclusive. They are together. Every single one of them, once you meet, every single one of them you carry forward. Once you meet it, you keep. You don't throw away and say, okay, I'm finished that. The next thing you carry forward. It comes with you into the next body, and then the next body, and they're cumulative, right? Cumulative, right? That's a word from school. So think about the dark awake that I taught early on in the gate of Ka, right? The morning stillness in that practice we started with on the first day. You did not stop doing that when we moved past the first week. Well, I hope not, and you should not. And for those of you who want to know about, the dark awake, there is the Black Light the Black Light Initiation Guide on the website, power-profit/resource. It's a wonderful, it's a comprehensive guide that is free for your use, and it teaches the dark awake, among other things in there. But you don't throw it away. You keep doing it. It's like daily spiritual hygiene for your Kim. I call Melanin Kim, because melanin means black and also dirty. So I don't like to employ that term so much. So Kim, okay. And where was I at? Okay, so it is a fire you tend. It is your personal hygiene. Everything keeps working because and it's practice. Practice makes perfect. So the more you practice, the more it doesn't seem like an effort to have to do these things. The more it just becomes second nature and easier just to fit into your day. Okay, and so um, everything that you have reclaimed on the path so far, your body back from neglect, your bloodline back from silence, reconnected with your ancestors, your heart back from that rigged ledger, that rigged scale, your name back from erasure, right? Not that it would be erased, but this is just some of the understandings that come with the Ren and the importance of the name Anomo. And then your shadow back from exile. We don't hide the shadow. No. And again, that's in a different live stream discussed. All of it is standing here with you right now in this room, in this practice. And I would say this is even more important. And you guys got to excuse me because I'm telling you, for those of you who understand, I think I'm going through menopause. So, because I got the hot flashes and they just keep coming. Um, so, what was I going to say? Um, I forgot what I was going to say. See, that's what hot flashes, they take the thoughts right out of your head. And so all of those chambers or the nine bodies of light are right here. And I was going to say, and this is especially important because the gate of Ak is where we begin to reframe who we are, what we do, what we want. We begin to step into understandings and practices that create us, that reclaim who we are. In activity, not in practice, to work on these things like the gate of Ka and the gate of Ba, right? This is the gate of Ak where we are shining, right? We claim the shining, right? So it is about reframe. Some say reprogramming, right? And so it's important to understand all the bodies of lights prior to the gate of Ka, prior to the gate of Ak, because you cannot stay in the gate of Ak and shine if you are not working the work. And I will say again and again and again, there is no quick fix to you. It took a long time for you to get where you are, and it takes time to unravel that, right? Society has done a job on many people. That could be through our parents, through schools, through religion, through our friends, through the media, all this stuff. So there is no quick fix. It's long-term work. And even in the work, my friends, there's still moments like even yes, I do this work and I still sometimes have to get it together because there are challenging things out here, right? So the only way you know how to get it together, especially when you've reached the gate of Ak, is that you have these strategies that you know to put in place, ideally in a routine, but at least when you need them, right? So let me tell you what this practice actually is, because I could just stay in a preach modality here, and I'll be like, why don't this lady get to the point? So look, I'm going to tell you what this practice is. Hopefully in plain words, plain language, and then I'm going to tell you why it is built this way because I think it is important. Because the way it's important because this is the culminating chamber before we get into the op. So I just really need to make sure that it is understood to the best of my ability. That is why I encourage folks to ask questions, right? So here is the practice. Where am I at? Yeah, I have a lot of notes. So here's the practice in one breath. Look, these things are not hard. They just need to be consistently done. So you get quiet enough to ask your soul a question your survival never had room for, right? Because we're so busy running around. You gotta find time to ask that question. All this running around, making ends meet, doesn't allow you to ask, sometimes even hear, to know what to ask, right? Then you listen for the truest answer. Then you write it down, and that is it. That is the shape of it. This is not a lot of things. It's just an activity you just keep doing. Excuse me. Now, it would be easy to hear that and think, well, that is simple, right? It does sound simple. I could just sit and think about my purpose for a minute, but I want to tell you why each piece must be the way it is. Because if you skip the why, right, you will do the practice and get nothing. And that is not my goal for anyone watching this here and now. And if you get nothing, you will perhaps start to judge yourself and say, "What's wrong with me? I can't do this." Look, there's nothing wrong with you at all. And don't ever ask that question ever, ever. Period. Not just for this, but ever in your life. Do not ask, "What is wrong with me?" My operative phrase: "What is right with me?" I don't say to somebody, "What's wrong with you?" I say, "What is right with you?" That's how my son grew up in my home. I heard myself saying, "What is wrong with you?" And I'm like, there's nothing wrong with him. And so we made a pact that we would never say that to each other. We would always say, "What is right with you?" Right? And we understood what that meant. Sometimes you got to wrestle the language down to the ground, because language is dangerous, as I talked about in the live stream on word power and no mo. So why the quiet? Why the dark? You all know why the quiet and why the dark, because you can't be afraid of the dark because you dark. I was looking at a video on YouTube earlier today, and I noticed that many times when African children are being initiated into particular rites, and this is some tribes, not all the tribe. It could be one tribe. I'm not sure, but I've heard this in regards to other practices, that they blindfold the child, and the blindfold stays on all day long, and they take it off at night. And that makes so much sense to me, because why? The question that was asked: why do you wear the blindfold all day? And for some of these initiations, it can last 4 years, 30 days, 2 weeks. 4 years is a long time for a child to go in from 7 years. He went in at 7 and came out at 14. Yeah, 7 years of wearing the blindfold and only having it off at night. And when the question was posed to this gentleman, why the blindfold? He said, because the elders wanted me to learn to use my senses. I ain't making this up. Let me tell you. Um, and then the Yoruba taught that the Ori, your inner destiny, the voice of your own soul, um, you have to hear it, right? And they warned that forcing yourself, being forced, and overwork drown it out. Your Ori, we talked about the Ori, your inner destiny, the voice of your own soul. Talked about it yesterday. Your soul is trying to speak to you all the time, okay? But it is doing this speaking, this reaching out to you underneath of a machine, a system that never turns off, an algorithm, so to speak, within you that never turns off. And it's not only within you, but it is outside of you to distract and confuse you. and it never turns off. You have to turn it off. Hence the blindfold in the day and take it off at night. Okay. And so the first thing the practice does is lower the noise. That's what the dark awake is. That is what sitting in the black light is. It is lowering the noise so the signal can finally come through. You have to hear your guidance, whether that is from the divine intelligence or God, whomever you call it, the cosmic consciousness, universal life force, your ancestors, your own intuition, right? Your spirit guides, whatever you believe in. You got to lower the noise so the signal can come through. You are not creating your purpose. You're not creating your purpose in the quiet. You are turning the volume down far enough to hear the one that was always there, right? You're not crafting your, I want to do this, I want to do that, this is who I am. No, no, no. We're not doing that in the quiet, right? We are turning the volume down so we can hear the purpose that has always been there, the purpose for which you were placed on this planet at this time, in that place, in that space. And why do we why do we write down this purpose by hand, right? What's the purpose of that? I could just say it in my head. Why I gotta write something down? And why I gotta write it by hand? Why can't I just click it? Click it in the computer, use the keyboard, get it in the computer. What's this writing down by hand stuff? Right? There's two reasons. The first is that the hand remembers what the eye forgets. But the second one is much deeper than that. And it comes straight from the Ren. Remember, that was the body of light. From your name week, which I think was a couple of weeks ago, right? Remember Nomo, the Dogon, Dogon, Dogon tribe in the Republic of Congo, right? Democratic Republic of Congo. This is years and years, centuries ago, and of course, I'm sure these practices still exist. But the Nomo, the power of the spoken and written word, my friends, to speak a thing, to write a thing, is not to describe it. It is to build a body for it in the world, right? So remember words, cast spells, they're incantations, right? So when you write a thing and speak it, you're building a body for it in the world. So when you write your flight map, and I showed you the flight map in the practice guide by hand, you are not journaling. People think this stuff is journaling. You are doing an act of creation. Now, journaling is one thing, right? Sometimes you just write because you want your intuition to come out, spirit, right? You're letting the spirit flow through you to see what it is. But there is some writing that is an act of creation. You are speaking and writing your purpose into being. You are not reflecting, so to speak, in the journal act. All right. And then there are two disciplines that keep this whole thing honest. And I want you to hold them as I go through here. The first is you do not answer with your resume, right? When the question comes, where do I want to fly? What do I want to do? You don't just go to your resume and reach for a job title or list of what is realistic. No, that's not how this works. That is your survival talking, and survival will always put you right back to the harness. The harness, my friends. The goal is to release the harness. Yes, that's a heavy lift, a heavy ask for many of us, but that is the goal, right? To remove the harness. The second Do not edit the answer. Like when you're writing it down and you get something and you're like, oh, and you want to change it, you want to censor what your body told you. Do not edit the answer for realism. That is problematic, right? Do not edit the answer for realism while you are in it, right? Your soul speaks in whole shapes, right? Big ones. And the editing mind will shrink them down to fit the little life you already have. Soul is flying, but we are crying, right? And I can't do that. That's ridiculous. Ah, so you may ask and you may get something big, right? Because the soul speaks in whole shapes, big ones. We don't want to edit it down to fit your spirit of scarcity or your fear. All right. And what happens is it gets sorted out later. That's why sometimes you go to a guide to help make these things manageable to act out, how to get started, what are the baby steps necessary to make this come to life, right? Because that is so important, you know? Give me a second. Where am I at? Okay. And so as I said before, you find some place quiet. You get quiet, my friends. Okay? You get quiet to ask these questions. You don't want anybody to interrupt you. And the dark awake is early before things wake up or late. I like late after everything goes still. I like that a lot to do this work because that is when the noise, as well as early morning, is the lowest. I like the night because it's dark, right? So the practice could include lighting a candle if you have one, or sit at your ancestor altar if you keep one. And then before you ask anything, before you reach for any big questions about your purpose, you come home to your body, right? So you do some meditative breathing, like with the ib practice, putting your hand on your heart, and the goal is to release whatever stress and tension you are holding. You just want to put it down and let it go. Okay. And now I know some of you are going to want to skip that part and get to the good part, the purpose part. Please do not. And let me tell you why this is not a warm up. This is the runway. This is getting you started down the runway. You cannot hear where your soul wants to fly while the full weight of your life is still bearing down on your back, right? It doesn't work that way. You cannot launch a soul from a body you have been treating like the enemy. These deep breaths and release are important. This is the cot, your first temple. Remember? If you don't, I invite you to go back to Power Prophet TV and check it out. You know, the very first body we learned to honor instead of correct. In that week, we said, you know, the body, this too is a temple. I am home, right? That is what you are doing right here at the start of this practice. You are arriving on purpose in the one place the flight must launch from. It comes from you, my friends. So take the breaths, feel the weight of your chair, and say to yourself, and mean it, this body is my first temple and I am home in it, right? So for these few minutes, and I would say about 3 to 5 minutes, get settled, uh, and set the whole load down, right? So you might say this whole phrase here: this body is my first temple, and I am home in it. For these few moments, I set the whole load down. I'm here only to listen. When you are home, then and only then you are ready to ask, right? So the end of the phrase is, I am here to listen, right? And only when you're home, when you're settled and situated, only then are you ready to ask your question. All right. And so the question, this is very important. With the load down and the body home, not stress, not bugging, but home, you ask your soul, your spirit, this. And I want you to use these exact words. So if you have a pen and a paper, you might want to write them down. This is also in the practice guide. You ask, if I were not surviving, if I were orchestrating, where would my soul fly? And then you just listen. You don't answer your own question, right? You wait and you notice the very first true thing that rises up before your mind gets a chance to argue with it. And it's so hard to capture those intuitive moments. It's the first thought. We always dismiss the first thought. It's the first thought. I and that just takes practice, right? That's what psychics have learned to discern. The first thought, first thing, that is the third eye communicating in that practice. That is psychic download. First thought, that is intuition, right? A message. First uncorruptible thought. Anything after that is corrupted because the ego takes over, right? And I'm just thinking about how many times I dismissed those first thoughts in my earlier years, and how the ego took over. And when the ego takes over, you know everything is for naught. It's just going to be a hot mess. So you want the first thing that comes up, and you don't want to censor it. You don't want to argue with it, right? Because if you begin to censor, question, whatever you're going to do, judge it, that means you've missed the first thought. Or you were so scared about the first thought that you began to interrogate it because it did not fit the fear that you have situated within yourself. Okay. Now, here's where I must teach something a little bit carefully, because this is exactly where most people in my practice trip up, right? Something is going to rise, usually for most people, maybe a few things, right? And you're going to need to tell the true answer from the false one, my friends. So the question is, how do you do that? How do I know what is true? And you already learned how. You learned it in the ib, the heart, right? The remember the ib, your heart is weighted against the feather of ma'at, truth and balance. I mean, we spent a whole week learning that your worth was never up for weighing on the world's rigged scale. Well, that same scale is the tool you use right now. And I do like visuals for most folks, right, who are new to this figuring out the intuitive message. When an answer rises, you do not weigh it against what is realistic. Okay. You weigh it against what is true. You ask, does this come from my soul, or does it come from the fear that has been auditing me my whole life? Right. And usually you can tell the difference. And again, this takes practice. And when we're in a retreat or in a workshop, it's easy to teach. Oh, not it's easy to teach, it's still work to discern for the individual. But you can feel the difference in your body, right? If you were honest, the resume answer, the fear answer comes in heavy. It feels different. And once you can discern that, that's like the key to understanding that intuitive download stuff, right? Um, it feels different. Um, it is loaded down with everybody else's expectations, right? With the shoulds, with what would look right, right? The true answer sits lighter, light like a feather, And it should scare you a little bit with how simple and how free it is. Keep the one that sits light, let the heavy ones go. And again, this takes practice, and our body will tell us, right? My mom used to say, follow your heart, but she never told me how to discern what was coming from my heart and what was coming from my head, right? Don't just tell your child to follow your heart. Give them strategies and skills on how to discern what's coming from the heart and what's coming from the head. Okay? And so there's one more body in the room with you while you ask, and I do not want you to think you're doing this alone, because you are not. Remember the Ka, the life force of your bloodline. Okay, you got to remember all this. All the work we did before is important for every body of light that comes after it. You don't lose it, you integrate it. So there are folks in the room who have your back, right? The line that refused to end, that rising current your soul wants to fly on, my friends. Okay, that is not something you generate by yourself out of nothing. That is your ancestors, right? Your ancestors who want you to fly. They laid the groundwork, right? Your bloodline, right? And it's the universal life force. It is your life force running through the cosmos, through your bloodline, through you, right? People think the divine intelligence is so separate from everything. The divine intelligence is made up of everything, including our ancestors. And it sits in our bloodline. Look, we are but a manifestation of the divine intelligence. We are but a representation of that magnificence here on this earth. It is a moment out of being divinely intelligent and coming into the corporal form that the divine intelligence can experience what is happening here in the 3D reality. It's a chance which many of us squander. It's an opportunity to relay information back to the cosmic consciousness. It's important for that cycle. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. It just gets recycled around and around and around and around. This is your opportunity. And when you're doing this work, you are not alone. The Ka, the bloodline. Doesn't always have to be blood. You have melanin in you. Melanin is everything in this world. That is what connects us beyond anything. I mean, it connects us to everything and anything. Everything has melanin. I remember when I first learned about the power of melanin, I'm using the word that I don't like to use, but when I learned about the power of melanin, I felt so powerful, empowered. I felt connected. I feel connected to everything all the time, to outer space, to multi-dimensions, the multiverses, galaxies, plants, animals, even inanimate objects, everything. That's power. And while we don't want to admit it because people get mad, I mean, Black people do have more melanin than anybody else, which means we are more connected than anybody else. Is that superior or supreme? We have capabilities that rise far above those of other people. That's a question you got to ask. Is that superior? Is that supreme? There is a greater capacity here of understanding everything, the connectedness of everything. And there are some groups of people that don't have that. They can't feel that. And that's a problem. It's a problem right now. It's just gotten worse. They can kill, destroy, cheat, lie, and with no remorse and no care. And it's not even egregious. It can be egregious. It can be passive. But you can't step on people passively or actively. and be a generative melanin being. There's a difference. I know I was talking to something on social media, and oh my God, I lost my thought. Um, what was I saying? Oh, I was talking about the shadow self. And somebody commented, well, the shadow self is important to address because people can be violent. Only certain people have an innate predisposition to violence. And then again, and also violence is a learned behavior, right? So the predisposed embrace violence. This is part of their nature, right? There are other groups of people who are not violent. So the shadow self doesn't operate the same way across groups of people. This idea of violence. Now, I might get smacked around for saying that, people by words, and people getting mad at me for saying something so messed up. Everybody's got a predisposition for violence. I'm sorry. Everybody does not. Some people can live harmoniously without serial killing or beating up their mate. I mean, it happened thousands, centuries ago in Africa. There was an egalitarian, the most harmonious civilization ever. And this predated people coming there and interfering. The violence did not exist. Well, particularly not the violence that we have here and now. Maybe there are rituals and roles and rules. Who knows? But the idea of violence and killing just to kill, slapping, beating up, just to do it because you can, it did not work that way. I did digress big time. So I'm getting back on track. So the ka, okay? So when you ask where your soul is trying to fly, you're also listening for where your ancestors, as well as the cosmic consciousness or the divine intelligence, universal life force, or your spirit guides. However, I don't want to get it too confused with the ka. We talked about ancestors. You're also listening to where your ancestors know you're supposed to go, because they know all, because they're existing in a different dimension where they can see things a lot more clearly than we can. All right. You're not inventing a destination. You're catching the current that has been moving through our people, your people, long before you got here. All right. Now, some of you, when I ask where your soul would fly, you are going to freeze, right? When I ask where would your soul fly, some folks freeze. Your mind is going to go blank because the question is so big and you have been told for so long that it is not for you. Not to mention the question is so big and you have felt, even if it's been conscious or not, that you are so small. That is a false belief. Okay? That if that is you, don't worry though, okay? There is a second door into the same room, and a gentler one if you have some sort of freeze, flight, or fight response to this question. That's trauma working right there. Instead of asking where would you fly, you ask this: what am I doing when I feel most alive? Most like myself. And then you let the picture come. I feel most alive when I'm doing this work, when I'm working with people. Right? When I am motivating, helping people feel motivated, guiding enhancing people's agency so that they feel that they can do things in this world. That is where I feel most alive, right? Problem solve, help make decisions, right? That's where I feel most alive. So you ask yourself, right, where do I feel most like myself? And let the pictures come. And the idea is we're not looking to like a whole bunch of stuff. Let the pictures come, and I want them small and specific, not grand, right? When do I feel like I'm most myself? Um, when I'm in the middle of a wedding party. What? That's grand. Like, what about that makes you feel most like yourself, right? Not the mountaintop, the kitchen table, the knives, forks, spoons, the plate, the glass, right? The moment when you are most you, all right? And so there's a way to work this, and um um so the aliveness you feel when the right picture comes, that's it. That is not just a nice mood, right? Or you feel, oh, that's nice. That is your heart, right? You felt something there, right? So that is your heart back on the honest scale, not the rigged scale, registering a yes. That is no argument attached to it, my friends. And notice where you feel it. You feel it in the body, the cot, the lift in the chest, the way you sit up a little, and then forward lean, my friends. That is the soul pointing through the body it lives in. That's that's for you, right? The grind and the hustle taught you to distrust your own aliveness. Gotta keep going, gotta keep going, gotta keep going, gotta keep going. It told you that what lights you up is a luxury, a distraction, something you must earn the right to feel after all the real work is done, after you retire, right? And I, I'm telling you the opposite. I ain't telling you to do anything. This is information for you to do with what you will. But I am telling you the opposite. Your aliveness is the compass. It shows you where to go. And your body is the needle on the compass, right? Where you come alive is where your soul has been pointing the entire time, period. You were just taught not to look, and you were taught not to ask, and you were not taught how to feel the answer. Now, here's the part of the practice that most of my clients miss, and I'm taking great strides to make sure that you don't have this challenge. And that happens because they think the practice ends when they open their eyes. Right? I'm done. It does not, because the Ba does not only speak in the quiet sitting, the Ba speaks in the night, in the light. Remember what the Ba is. Our ancestors taught that the soul goes out by day and comes home by night. It is a traveler. They built their tombs, my friends, with a way for it to come and go. It had to get out, it had to come back. So the dream is one of the oldest rooms your soul speaks in, which means the practice has a night shift. Keep paper by your bed. Me, I put notes. I jump up and put a text message to myself, right? Um, and when you wake, before you touch the phone, and the reason why I use my phone is because I wake up in the middle of the night and want to get this out, because dreams will dissipate very quickly. So I try to get it down, everything down, the colors, what happened with the right, left arm. I try to get everything, the street, was it dim light, the people, kind of clothes they had. I try to get every detail. What's happening, what's not happening. I try to get every single detail. Right. So if you are waking up the next day, maybe a pen and pencil will work because you can have time to go over and do that. If you're like me, waking up in the middle of the night, um, and you want to capture something, sometimes I just grab that because I can really move my fingers in that text quickly to get the information out. But keep the paper by your bed, keep the pen by your bed. And when you awake, before you do anything, write down whatever the dream left with you, every piece, every scrap, every feeling, right? And another practice that goes along with this is, you're doing this work and then you're going into the night shift. You like you can ask the question like, I might say, so I'm not, this is more advanced, but you can say something like, um, walk me into my purpose, show me my purpose, something simple. Activate my purpose, something with the purpose word in it, or where my soul wants to fly, show me my soul flying. Okay, something, right? And then you put that into your head. I say repeat that 3 times, and then you go to sleep. You go to sleep. All right. And let me tell you why two things make the dream important, because two of your bodies are doing the work here. The first is the ka, again, the bloodline, right? Your ancestors speaking to you, the divine intelligence speaking to you, your spirit guides speaking to you. Um, and and so our tradition, or just African spiritual traditions, teaches that through the gate of Ba, the traveler learns that she or he or them is never traveling alone. So the knowing that arrives in the night is not only yours, it is the line, your bloodline, still speaking, still guiding. So you will get bits and pieces, if not the whole story, in these dreams. And the second is the shoot, your shadow here, right? And now you see why the shadow week had to come before this one. Well, it came before, that's when the body of light is, but it's important that it precedes this work. For most of your life, the reason your inner signal is full of static was the shadow, right? The exile parts of you turning away underneath of it all the anger, the grief, and desire you were taught to hide. The static is what drowned the dream, but you did the work. You turned toward your shadow. That's what we did during the shadow week. And you should have told it, you're not my enemy. That's what the shoot practice guide was about. You are coming home. And when the shadow comes home, the static falls a bit, and it could fall completely, right? The channel clears, which means maybe for the first time in your life, the dream can come through clean, right? So you embrace the shadow, because the shadow may be part of it's driving your purpose, right? So give yourself that 1 minute, right? Before you go to bed, speak to your shadow, let it know it's okay. If you want to come through, as part of how my soul wants to fly, let it happen, right? Because all the exhaustion it takes to hide bits and pieces of you is part of that static. So to make the dream go clear, you have to foreground your ka, right? Speak to your ancestors. Maybe you're asking them show you how your soul wants to fly. And then the shoot, your shadow, right? You let it know, I'm not afraid of you, to walk along this as well, to show me the ways in which you are part of my soul's purpose, right? And when you wake up, you write everything down or you type everything out. If you're waking up in the morning, I say write because you need a few minutes without your phone. If you're waking up in the middle of the night and you just got to get it out, especially for people like me who the dreams just go like that, you get it down as quick as possible. Sometimes writing can take too long, especially in the middle of the night when you want to lay back down and go back to sleep, or maybe go back to sleep and can continue to dream. I don't know about you, but I've dreamt in chapters, right? I had a dream, I woke up, went back to bed, and it continued. Woke back up, and I went to back to sleep, and it continued like a saga, right? So find ways in the middle of the night to get the information out quickly. Sometimes it could be a chore to pull the piece of paper out and a pen and do that. But the phone, easy access, start to typing a message to yourself. You don't read it and all this stuff. You just type it in and you let it go. And you don't start flipping on social media. I probably shouldn't even be saying that because people will pick it up, start writing in it, and then start doing something else. Maybe the phone's a more advanced technique. Don't use the phone if you're a beginner. Write all your dreams out with a pen and a piece of paper. Okay. So now we're getting into the flight map. The flight map is a charter. It is your purpose written in your own words, in your own hand. And I want you to write it as if your soul, your spirit, were holding, excuse me, the pen and not your fear. In the practice guide, there are a handful of lines to fill in. And I want to walk you through them, not so you check them off, but so you understand what each one is reaching for. So the first thing you write down is what you are doing when you feel the most alive and most like yourself. I guess I should pull up the practice guide, but I'm scared it's going to mess up my connection. So I'm not going to do it because I'm already glitching here. So the first thing you write down is what you're doing when you feel most alive and most like yourself, right? And most yourself. That is the aliveness we just found pinned to a page. So it stops being a passing feeling. Then you write the load you have been carrying that was never yours to carry, because naming that is how you find what to set down, what you need to set down. Then you write what orchestrating your life would look like. What would that mean? And I want that one concrete, real, right? Not a fantasy, because purpose must touch the ground to change anything. It has to be real. And then you write the one direction your soul keeps trying to fly, even when you ignore it, which we have and we do, right? And I will tell you a secret about that line in a moment. And then the last, the line, the whole map resolves into one sentence. It begins, I am here too, and then you finish it. These are like extended instructions. And so now let me tell you why you write it and why you say it out loud. We already talked about this a bit with the Nomo and the Rend, right? You have to claim it. You know, what you speak, you build. So when you finish that last sentence, I am here to, and write it down, and then you read it out loud, even softly, you are not making a note to yourself. You are speaking a body into being for a purpose that has been waiting on you to say it, my friends. The generative power of Nomo. All right. You are taking the vague ache out of I meant for more, right? And you are giving it the coordinates, which is very important. That is what turns a wish into a map. And here is the secret that I promised you about that line, the one direction your soul keeps trying to fly, even when you ignore it. Very often, that direction is the exact thing your shadow has been exiled for. Like my mouth, my passion, my my authority to direct. All of that was seen as too much. It was pushed down, right? So that was the shadow I needed to fix. I was too much. I had other knowledge. I just didn't function in the realities in which I was in. right? That shadow self. So, very often, the direction is the exact thing your shadow was exiled for holding, my friends. Believe it. Believe it. The thing you were ashamed of wanting, right? I never in my life thought I'd be a spiritual teacher, but in holding back these things and then allowing them to rise to the surface, this is what happened. I never thought this. I always wanted to be, oh my God, I wanted to be famous, a leader, like, um, respected in these circles, in academic circles. Yeah, I wanted to be a science guru, right? It wasn't even shame about it. I had shame for my voice. Like I didn't know what, I felt like I didn't know what I was talking about. I was an imposter to myself, right? Um, but I guess there was shame in me not even thinking about spiritual teaching as something that I could do. Granted, I ain't making no money doing this, right? I don't know how long I'm gonna keep doing it. And I probably just spoke some generative power over my life. But in this moment in time, no, I am not. That is true. And it is true. I don't know how long I'm going to be able to continue to do this. But the bottom line is, I'm doing it regardless, having faith that something will open up. Energy shifts and change, things change. Perhaps the energy will change. Is there an open door? Is there a closed door? It's an open door because anybody can go on the internet. Anybody can say anything anywhere, right? It all gets a little odd, when you're doing what you believe is your purpose. Because some of us take the grand leap and detach, believing, and in that believing, perhaps finding or discovering um, that the time may not be right. Yeah, I'm trying to think of something else. The timing may be off, right? Because we all got to eat, right? And that's a lesson, right? So everybody can't detach unless you're prepared for what that means. And I'm telling you, I don't wish any of what I'm experiencing here and now in the reality on anybody. If people should detach, they should just flow right into what they want, right? So I guess that's when you start to do your do, just be aware, like what you ask for, what you do, there's always some sort of not consequence, but for every action, there is a reaction. Yes. And I know that sounds, a little, ooh, what does that mean? But, for everything you do, you got to be aware of the possibilities that may arise, the things that may arise for you, challenging and not, right? So that is key. And once you find this stuff, once you're going through this, I'm saying you don't just detach and do, but you can if you're prepared. This is all done with the individual. Yes, there's a part of risk in all of this, right? And that is once you decide your purpose and you're going to do it, right? For me, I had no choice. I had to leave where I was at. I could not do any of that anymore because I felt like it was killing me. And it was literally. Um, so it is what it is. And and you don't want to strategize yourself out of taking a leap of faith because you won't take it due to fear. So in a way, I was thrust. into this purpose because I just could not take another moment as part of anybody's machine. And so in that, there are certain things that have that arose that I'm not going to say they scare me, and I'm just sharing this as a lesson. Um, but they at certain times can have you questioning your faith that this path is for you. That's what I'm saying. All right. So, and then you should never run from that and go, oh God, I made a mistake. No, there's no mistakes. None. It's life. You learn, right? But you don't turn away and quit because you start to feel a little scared. You start to feel a little anxiety. Oh, maybe I made the wrong decision. I know I should have did this. What was wrong with me? I should have kept that job paying me $18 an hour, running around like a nut back in the machine. You don't jump ship until and if you absolutely realize that perhaps there needs to be an adjustment, right? Everything that you don't know, the unknown is a risk always. But it beats walking into an adventure than shrilling up in obedience to the machine, especially for Kim people. But each individual has to have their own walk. And that's what this is about. So you go through this and you find your purpose, and then sometimes the guides, being in a community of people, can help figure out the next steps. And that's what we do. We figure out the next steps. All right. I have no idea why I went through all that. Somebody needs to hear this there today. And I'm glad I shared this. Okay. Because life is real. It is real. All right. Now, I don't want you to put your map. Now, look, we did all this stuff, doing your purpose, right? Now, a map does no good in the drawer. You don't put it in the drawer. So let me tell you how this lives past tonight, right? The practice guide has a little ritual card on it, and it is simple enough to carry in your pocket and put on an index card. Some of this work is arts and craftsy work, right? Every morning before you reach for anything, right? Before you get started with what's next, you ask one question before you do something. Am I about to lift this or I'm about to conduct it? You got to begin to feel in your body what these sensations are, the lifting and the conducting. That question alone will start to change your days. Believe me. Okay. Then you pick just one thing that day. One, you choose to orchestrate instead of carrying it. You make a decision, right? At night, you jot down, you can jot down what it felt like, right? And that's important. And then you can close with the line, I am here to fly, right? But you also got to track your dreams in this. So you pick one thing, right, that you want to choose to orchestrate, because the dreams will communicate with you too. You write down a fragment from your dream if you can remember, and then you close a line. So I'm here to fly. If you're not dreaming, don't worry about it. Sometimes we don't have a dream that relates, but the dreams do relate. So if you dream something, write down a piece of that dream so you can remember what that dream was. Okay, because the tracker holds you to all of this stuff after the feeling, right? We get really excited, but the tracker holds you to it after the feeling begins to wear off, and it wears off, right? That is normal. We can't stay high all the time, right? And I want you to notice what is happening here, because it is the whole teaching from earlier coming true. This new practice, the flight map, my friend, does not replace the ones you've already done. We do a lot of mapping in here. I'm a researcher, right? A lot of this stuff is observations of self, right? We're not taught to observe ourselves, to research ourselves, right? That is what part of what I bring to this practice is how do we research ourselves, analyze those data, interpret them, and apply them, right? That is research. Collecting data, analyzing it, interpreting it, sometimes translating it to different situations, but then ultimately wondering, figuring out how this applies, what it does, what does it undo, right? We don't learn this. So everything has a map to collect data about you. Okay, so this flight map does not replace the other ones. And all of these practice guides, like I do put up a new one every week for the body of light we're in. So we have basically, we got 4 more weeks of this to go. The thing, what I'm going to do with these practice guides is they're going into the book, Out of the Darkness, which is the Ascension series written down, right? With the practice guides and everything. And it will all be in there so that it's accessible. Okay. And then again, these practice guides without the book are going to be accessible in the temple, as well as the guided practices. So, this flight map does not replace the others. It joins them, my friends. It takes its place in the same standing that you've been doing so far on this path, right? Next to the Dark Awake, next to calling of the names of your ancestors, all of the maps, right? You do not finish a body of light. You keep it. That is the work. You keep it lit. That is the work. Okay. So, let me just bring this home right now because I've been talking for quite a while. And I want to be careful about how I say this because today is not the actual top of the mountain here. The Ba is not the peak of this path. What today is showing you, what today showed you is something better than a peak, my friends. It showed you that this path does not leave its bodies behind. It does not. It gathers them. This practice only works every single piece of it because your Kat, Ka, Ib, Ren, and Shoot all come up here to fly with you. Okay, so hear this as your declaration today. You are not a mule, my friends, and that harness was never yours. You are the Ba, the soul our ancestors drew as a bird with its arms raised, not straining alone, but in communion, right? And when you rise, you do not rise as some thin, lonely thing. You rise home in your body, weighted true by your own honest heart, my friends, carried on the current of your whole bloodline, named by your own word, with your shadow beside you at last instead of behind you. That is who takes this flight. You. That's a lot. And I'm still behind. I don't know why I'm moving slow. But before I go, I got to do, come on to the temple and have a good time. There's a temple right there, keep an eye out for it being free of charge for a minute until 2027. All right. There you go. And if you want to get a 9-body reading, here you go, $222 for the founding rate. It goes up from there. All right, my friends. As far as the price, it goes through all of the bodies and shows you where you're strong, where you're weak, and then that's a good way to know what to do when you get in the temple. Okay. So, my friends, this has been a wonderful. I've had a really, really inspired time here. As usual, as usual, I enjoy my time here. I enjoy doing this work. Um, and I don't want to leave y'all at all. No, I don't. All right. So please like, subscribe, hit notifications, get me up in the algorithms, help me come home, right? Mm, okay. And thank you, my friends. I appreciate you. Have a blessed day. Hopefully, I'll see you here tomorrow. Um, thank you. Thank you again. Have a blessed one.